Justin Madders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I first of all say how pleased I am to see my honourable friend, the member for Bristol South, taking her rightful place on the front bench. I'd also like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Reading East, on his maiden speech. I thought he spoke with great sincerity and knowledge about his constituency and the challenges facing it, in particular in terms of pressure on housing and public services. Madam Deputy Speaker, I just wish to raise one issue today, an issue that not only affects a number of my constituents, but also many others across England and Wales. It is a subject that's already been touched on by my honourable friend, the member for Poplar and Limehouse, and that is the subject of leasehold. I spoke on this subject in the Chamber last December, at which point I described the emerging leasehold scandal as the PPI of the house building industry. But now, having seen more of the serial failures, deceptions and obfuscations, I believe I may have understated the degree of culpability right across the board. The developers are, of course, public enemy number one, but the lenders, the solicitors and even the government all have to take some share of the blame for a scandal which has the potential to fundamentally destabilise the housing market if it is not tackled soon. As my honourable friend, the member for Poplar and Limehouse, said earlier, I am now Vice Chair on the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Leasehold and Commonwealth Reform, which he brilliantly chairs alongside the member for Worthing West. And they have been superbly assisted by the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership in bringing the matter to the attention of parliamentarians. And it does seem there is now a degree of consensus across the House that these abuses need to be tackled. I do understand the government will be coming forward with plans to tackle some of the abuses in the leasehold sector shortly. But it is vitally important that the proposals are not only creating a clear and fair framework for new builds, but they also create a strategy to deal with the existing rotten mess that developers have created. So now there does appear to be some self-awareness at last by developers that leasehold homes are becoming toxic, with many now pledging voluntarily not to sell any new homes on a leasehold basis. But that will not assist my constituents who have already bought their homes and have been quoted extortionate sums to buy their properties, or to obtain permission to alter the property, or to even ask a question of their landlord. Nor will it assist the many who are already trapped because they have onerous leases that purchasers are no longer interested in signing up to, and that some building societies will no longer lend on. And it will not assist us in holding to account the guilty men and women who must have known that creating this second lucrative income stream for developers would ultimately be at the cost of their customers. So, as I say, Mr Deputy Speaker, developers are now beginning to acknowledge their responsibility, with Taylor Wimpey voluntarily announcing in April they were going to set up a process so that those with the most onerous leases had the opportunity to convert them to new leases where the ground rent would only increase by RPI instead of doubling every 10 years. That announcement, sadly, is though where the credit stops, because 3 months on, progress has been painfully slow. In the intervening period, I've had at least one constituent contact me because their ground rent has doubled since the announcement was made, which means that if it ever does get converted to an RPI lease, then those RPI increases will be applied to a ground rent that is twice what it could have been. This has ongoing consequences, of course, should my constituent be ever in a position to purchase the freehold outright, and if you just try and purchase it, then she will be still having to negotiate with the owner of the freehold, whoever that is, and they will still have to navigate the fiendishly complicated, lengthy and extensive process that we have in place at the moment. The lease itself may still contain other punitive clauses aside from the ground rent, which we've seen from examples can include charges of up to £3,000 just to get permission for an extension. And this is all before we consider those who aren't covered, such as second-generation purchasers, where Taylor Wimpey aren't the freehold owners. Where do they stand? There is going to need to be an active government strategy to deal with everyone affected by this scandal, and the government does actually have a financial interest to sort this out. At the end of March 2017, the number of Help to Buy purchases on leasehold properties stood at just over 28,000, of which 11,641 are houses. 23% of all Help to Buy purchases are on leasehold properties, and given concerns about the drop in value of some of these properties with the most onerous leases, there is a real question about whether the government will get all its money back eventually. And to my astonishment, there has not been anything to suggest there is going to be an outright ban yet on Help to Buy being used to purchase leasehold properties. But let us be clear, Mr Deputy Speaker, sorting out the immediate consequences of onerous leases must be the start of the process, not the end of it. We need to learn the lessons and, if necessary, legislate so the worst excesses of capitalism that we've seen here are not allowed to infect our society again. There needs to be a much easier, quicker and cost-effective way so people can purchase their freehold outright. and then we need to bring in an outright ban on houses being sold on a leasehold basis. But there also needs to be a long and hard look at how we got into this position in the first place. I would like there to be a full select committee inquiry into how this practice developed. At the moment, we do not even know the extent of it. Developers must be required to give evidence about why this systematic duping of their customers was allowed to start in the first place. Who were the authors of those leases that now nobody will sign up to? How many properties were made leasehold needlessly? How much profit have they made out of this scam? And who exactly are the beneficiaries of these leases now? These properties are being passed around from one company to another. Some are based outside this country, and there's secrecy about who the ultimate recipients are of the substantial incomes. Yep. There is an old saying that an Englishman's home is his castle, but it now seems that an Englishman's home is in fact a revenue stream for an offshore company operating from a tax haven. What is very clear to me is that when people bought their houses, they thought they were doing just that, buying a home. Yeah. What they never contemplated for a moment was that actually the true owner of their home would be someone they may never know the identity of, who can sell on the interest in the property to somebody else without their knowledge or consent. It sounds like something out of feudal society, not 21st century Britain. Yeah. That takes me to where I would like to see a select committee look at the legal profession. Speaking as a former solicitor myself, I know mistakes are made, but it seems incredible to me that so many people make the same complaint about the advice that they received at the time of their purchase. I surveyed my constituents in leasehold properties, and a staggering 80% of them did not know the true nature of what they were buying. I think those figures demonstrate that there is a compelling need for further examination of the advice that was provided. I've heard of developers offering incentives to use particular solicitors. Why would they do that, and what led to such a collective failure in the legal profession? What advice was given to lenders whom solicitors also have a duty to? We now know, for example, that Nationwide will no longer lend on properties with doubling ground rents. It rather raises the question about what theirs and other lenders' exposure is, and crucially, why they granted mortgages on these properties in the first place. None of the developers will tell us how many properties they've built with these onerous clauses in. We need to know the scale of the problem, and the stability of the housing market rests on the back of that. So hopefully I've demonstrated a range of issues which this scandal needs to be sorted with. A full select committee inquiry is the way ahead, and this hasn't happened by accident. We need to know why it started. So finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, I wish you, all the other members, all the staff working here in particular, who worked so hard to make this place run smoothly, a very restful and peaceful summer.